right, get ready.
Hello, hello. And we are live and welcome everybody to Shared Spaces with Chap, Dayson, and Quida. And today we have Lou, who's always on with us every now and again. And then we also have John. So, John, as a newcomer, can you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you got going on?
Yeah, my name is John Rusnak. I'm the executive director of a ministry called Uncuffed Ministries. That's a 501c3 in Maryland, and we serve young guys who are incarcerated and caught up in the adult legal system in Maryland. So anywhere from the Youth Detention Center downtown to the Department of Corrections to the Hickey School and some of the juvenile justice centers. We're trying to be distinctly different than other prison ministries. We're trying to serve the kids' secular needs, like, do they need medical care? Are they in touch with their moms? Do they have a lawyer? Things like that. And like all that really directed towards building an enduring relationship with them so that they might ask us to share our faith.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So just so that we can go ahead and let you know what we all do, John. I am the founder of Small Tomorrow Homes. We build micro shelters and tiny homes for people who are unhoused. And we do that with volunteers, and we teach our volunteers how to use the tools and to train them. So I'd love to talk to you about how to get some of your guys involved in, volunteering or some sort of workforce development, something that you guys already have going on that maybe we can, jump in. I don't want to do anything, but I would love to talk to you about how we can work together.
So yeah, I read a very nice article about you while I was waiting, and we are doing some house flipping and employing the boys in that, which I think is a really great thing for restoring the housing stock in Baltimore, and then also making sure that those are not. I guess gentrification is okay, but like making houses that are really cool for people who already live in the city and love the city. That's what I'm mostly interested in. So yeah, we'll have a lot to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Generational wealth without gentrification. Like, we're all about that. Yeah. So, Dayson, tell us about what you all have going on with Creative Influence and how you're an author, all the things.
So what's up, John? My name is Dayson Brooks. I am a college student currently attending Compton State University. Nice. I am a political advocate, community activist, and I am a published author. I'm a mentor. I wear a lot of different hats. Right now, I am on the board of Creative Influence, which is a nonprofit organization servicing East Baltimore. Little shameless plug. Actually, right now, Creative Influence is planning a teen camp, which is supposed to be serving teenagers who are, usually left behind as camp is concerned. I'm also working at a camp right now, which the age ranges from 5 to 12, I think. And, that doesn't really leave much space for teenagers to do stuff during the summer, which is why they often get in trouble, as I'm pretty sure you know.
So I also got in trouble with that age as well, without a lot of alternative.
It's so easy to get in trouble at that age, but that's a great point, Dayson. I don't think I ever thought about the fact that there's not many, activities for kids to do, and at that age, you're not old enough to work. So
you're older. You can start working at 14 years old with YouthWorks, which is a big thing here in Baltimore City, but not too many teenagers here in Baltimore City know how to get into YouthWorks. Not everybody has broadband, not everybody has a computer, not everyone has internet in order to apply for the YouthWorks job. So it's just a lot of younger people, a lot of teenagers are getting left behind, and then they wonder why these people end up in the criminal justice system. There's nothing for them to do outside of sports. There's very little for them to actually get engaged with. And I know younger kids go to summer camp, which was what David McNair, the founder of Creative Influence, kind of noticed. Some of these younger kids go to summer camps, and they stay in these summer camps all year long. They go on trips, they go swimming, they get to talk to people about their problems, if they have any. But these teenagers who are actually having a lot more problems than some of the younger people are. As a teenager, you're, trying to figure yourself out. You're discovering your identity. whatever that may mean. And you don't really have a place to, share your feelings, share your whatever experiences, so on and so forth. And so, yeah, I think David McNair came up with this teen camp so that way these kids could have that outlet.
Dayson, do you know anyone from Young Life?
No, I do not.
Well, it's an interesting organization. I'd love to connect you with them. I'll just be frank. Like for many years, it was a organization that served a bunch of white affluent kids in the suburbs, and did a great job with it, and like camps.
Well, that's how a lot of things start. Don't even apologize for that.
But it's awesome now because my very good friend Josh Goodman runs Young Life in the city, and they are reaching out, starting at like the middle school age, and just building enduring relationships again with kids, and they love to do camps. And the nice thing about that is because it has this sort of suburban support staff, they raise a ridiculous amount of money, and they're able to take the kids to camp. So I'd love to connect you with them at some point if you'd like.
Yeah, yes, please. Actually, that is one of the bigger aspects of this. So it is getting ran through Baltimore City Recs and Parks. Mm-hmm. However, there are still donations that are needed that Creative Influence and other nonprofit organizations can give in order for these kids, these teenagers, to have what they need. One really important, factor that I think we consider is school, right? These kids are expected to go to school. However, they do not have proper clothes. They do not have the, best tennis shoes. They don't have the school supplies they need, books, pencils, pens, so on and so forth. And so it doesn't motivate them to go to school when they don't have the things that they need for school, or when they're getting bullied for the things that they don't have, right? So in this teen camp, we're also taking any donations. You can donate shoes, you can donate pencils, pens, paper, book bags, anything. So that way we can help some of these teenagers when they do start school.
Amen. That's great, man.
And I'll also add real quick. I actually met Dayson at a camp. So camp is, camp's the theme today, I guess. Because definitely there was value in that. And you see a young man who's now an author and he's in the community doing stuff. And I'd like to think that part of that was his camp experience and relationships he built. And there's value in that. So hopefully the commissioner's listening, and next year he'll bring back the police camp that we did. But if not, there's plenty of other people out here in the community doing it. Louis, yourself real quick, man.
Louis, that was for you. Tell us a little bit about PowerFest.
Hey, everybody.
What's up,
nice to meet you, John.
Oh, he's breaking up.
Yeah, it looks like he'll be back in a bit. Okay, so Dayson, did you have another question? It seemed like you were about to say something. Do you remember?
No, I was just going to talk a little bit about, what Chap has said, how we met in the camp, right?
Go for it.
So we actually met in, we had a show about this, 3 shows ago, something like that. We actually met in a teen camp that was supposed to have the ability to help teenagers in Baltimore City who are going through a rough time, who may have been considered as at risk. I wasn't necessarily considered as at risk. However, I was nominated to be in this teen camp by one of my fellow churchgoers. And so I think that's another aspect I think John can kind of talk to, the importance of church or faith as far as, younger people are concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, for me, it was my salvation. I got in a lot of trouble when I was a kid, and just had a lack of morals, and I grew up in an Italian neighborhood in South Philadelphia where there was not a great regard for the law. so I ended up, long story short, I ended up incarcerated when I was a kid, and that was when I really found my faith. But I do find it really important now for Uncuffed is that we have to serve kids of any spectrum. Like it doesn't matter if the kid's Muslim or atheist or agnostic or whatever. Like we have to serve every single kid without regard to any of the stereotypical judgments that you get on Christian that people assume about Christians. And I think they're not true, but they're true for some people, but they're hopefully not true for us. So faith is so important to me. But like I said, I want to meet all the kids' secular needs first, and then we find a lot of opportunities where young men will say, like, well, why are you doing this? And then it's a greater opportunity to discuss like what motivates us and what moves us. And man, I don't know, without any sort of moral guidelines, I don't know how we navigate through this universe.
Yeah, but the thing is, people don't have morals, and when they do navigate through this, people get hurt. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it doesn't end well because there's no sort of agreement of I'm going to treat you like a human, so you treat me like a human. And
Right.
it's just anything goes, eye for an eye. Man. That's not how community is done. So that's why we gotta continue to have these conversations. And like you said, John, continue to be inclusive, because it's interesting to me that Dayson's like, yeah, I went to this camp, but I'm not at risk. But it's like, you are a Black boy. Like at that moment, that makes you at risk being an inner city. But I understand that you're like, I'm not a victim. That is not me. Do not label me. I'm not a statistic. But to some degree, we have to recognize those stigmas so that you understand how people recognize you, right? You know who you are, but what do people see when they see you? And we have to change that. Like, they don't see an author until you say, I'm an author.
Right.
I think I kind of missed the ball on that, right? Because I've already had this conversation about this camp where I was, fussing and fighting, saying that I'm not at risk. Why do I have to go to this camp? But I didn't actually recognize the, systematic or institutional things that were going against just my skin color, that were going against just my gender. But I also didn't understand some of the, childhood pain and anger and hurt that I had. And I think that's another issue. Right. And I think that's another issue that a lot of younger or teenagers have to also circumnavigate. The fact that they don't consider themselves as being problems or having problems, but there are still unchecked problems within, their experiences, their past, their whatever.
Yeah, well, and being able to articulate it. Go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
Well, I say it's a very delicate balance how we interact with people. So, like, for instance, when I talk to my more conservative suburban or ex-urban friends, and they all think I'm a crazy liberal, right? And then all my liberal friends think I'm trying to make America great again. So I don't know where I really end up. But when I speak to my more conservative friends in the suburbs, I want to list all the potential issues that a young man and problems they have. And like, I really actually want to make excuses, like even things like lead poisoning and sort of legacy addiction issues and family breakdown and really poor education sometimes. I want a list of that stuff, right? But when I talk to a young man, I don't want to have what I would call the low expectations of I call it the subtle racism of low expectations. Like for a young man that I'm talking to, I want to hold him exactly accountable as I hold my son. So I want to give them stop sinning, like do what's right. Like, dude, you're a smart dude. Do what's right. Period. But,
right.
It's that balance between like, what do we tell people that don't have respect for people in the city, and then what do we tell our friends that we're actually working with and we work alongside? It's not easy.
No, it's not. But to that point, that's why I'm like, Dayson, how people see you. You know what I mean? Like, he understands, like, I'm not a victim. I can read. I'm going to school. Like,
yeah.
I'm good. Like, I know what I got to do. But the way society has, like you said, there's systemic things that are just embedded in the fabric of America, of Baltimore, of the school system, the prison, the school to prison pipeline, even. Like, that exists. And, kids are going to school and going to detention and not realizing that this is where it starts, whether it's intentional or unintentional. What were you going to add?
I talk to so many kids who tell me that, like, when they're locked up, that's the best education they've ever had, which is terrifying. It's terrifying to me. Sorry, go ahead, Chap.
No. I'm agreeing with you. That is terrifying. And I'm not to change the subject or anything, but I wanted to get back to what you do when you serve behind closed doors, because those doors are hard to get behind, especially for juveniles. They're very particular about who they let in, and there's a rigorous screening process. And one thing I noticed that I met John because I met his team on site when I was serving at Hickey. And I was serving with a group that, although well-intentioned, I think the people that were serving were well-intentioned, but they were missing the point. So as a city chaplain, I guess I had more perspective. Growing up in the city, I had more perspective. Growing up with all my friends who got sent to Hickey had more perspective. So the people I was going with would go in for like an hour, do a Bible study, and leave.
Yeah.
And it just seemed very transactional. It seemed very, I guess when people judge Christians, that's the kind of thing they're looking at, where it's like you're just going and reading the Bible at them, and how are you going to build relationships? And then when you go behind closed doors, what are they doing to, what are they doing for the kids? And a lot of it seems like, and this is just my experience, and my experience could be skewed from my perception, but it seemed like they raised a lot of money to do this, and then they go in for an hour and they do a Bible study and leave, and there was no real connections being made. And what I liked about the director at Hickey was that he respected me as a chaplain, and he gave me some freedom to do other things. Like I was going to, and I'm sure that I can test to John's team doing this. Like you go to court with the kids. Sometimes you give their mom a ride to court. Sometimes if their mom's parked and she's parked too long, you run outside and you feed the meter so she can stay in court with her kid. Sometimes a mom is in court screaming at the judge, lock them up. I don't know what to do with them. I'm done. There's all these different things. And the director he welcomed anyone who wanted to serve more. And the organization I was with frowned upon that and actually separated. Like I wasn't allowed to volunteer for this group because I was doing too much. And I'm like, how can I do too much for kids in this situation? Like, I think the straw that broke the camel's back was one Thanksgiving. My wife works at the ER. It was her week. It was her holiday to work. So she was at the ER all day. So we did Thanksgiving on the weekend. So it freed me up where I sat at Hickey. I held down the spades table for 12 hours, whooped their butts, took them to school, ate a bag lunch. And that was one of my favorite Thanksgiving memories in 43 years of life. Like it was the best. And they were like, you can't do that and be associated with us. And I'm like, okay. Great.
Bro, you have boundary issues. That's why I really like you.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, if I see a need, if I see a need, I cut to the chase and fill the need and then answer for it later, honestly.
Bro, I'm not going to mention the name of that ministry, but I wholeheartedly.
No, I wasn't going to.
They raise a tremendous amount of money, and
they do.
What they do is I don't really know. And actually, I went to their fundraiser this year, and they were still pushing the ministry, which is
like
hilarious.
when President Bush was in like his wife showed up to one of the fundraisers. Like they get the money, but a lot of it doesn't come to our children in the city, and that's neither here nor there. But I just say that to say there's so much needs there that I believe that what you do, John, and I know Mac. I met is the lady's name Karen or Kathy? Kim. I knew it was a K. I saw you guys in a similar spirit and engaging the kids differently, less transactionally, more meeting needs, and there's so much value there that can't just.
I'll tell you this: that in the Baltimore County Detention Center, I've had a Bible study. Well, pre-COVID, I had a Bible study there for like 6 years, and this this church, suburban church, was there, and they asked me to meet them for coffee. I was like, sure, I'm happy to meet for coffee. They said, well, we notice a lot of people come to your Bible study, but no one comes to ours. I said, well, who'd you invite? Well, I don't know. We kind of invited everybody. I'm like, well, if you don't know the kids' names, they're not coming to your Bible study. Let me tell you that. Like, if you don't meet these kids and know what their mom's name is and give them some reason to trust you, they have no reason to trust you. You look like a cop when you come in. So like,
we're not stupid,
right?
Like, play with us. Like, no, it's not cool. Yeah.
No matter, and I'll tell you what, these are very nice people that had great intentions, but they didn't understand the difference between transactional and relational ministry, and that's the whole thing, man. Like, you got to do life with people.
Yeah, build relationships.
That word for the Holy Spirit in the Bible is parakletos, like come alongside, right? Yeah. So like, if you're not willing to come alongside somebody and do the tough stuff, you got no business, man, in ministry. I think.
Bring it, man. I like it. So I want to share with you, John, a really cool story. And this is another one that was over the top and kind of got me kicked out. Not out of the institution, but out of the group I was volunteering with. There's this one kid, little white boy, right? Little tough kid. And you probably know him. Your team probably remembers him. His name was Timmy. We called him Little Timmy TJ. Mm-hmm. And him and this is what's really funny. Him and like a bunch of the young black dudes, they loved this movie, Jamesy Boy. They loved.
Oh, really? I don't know that movie.
You seen it?
I haven't seen that. No, I will. I'll look it up.
So all these young black dudes are telling me, Chap, you got to watch Jamesy Boy. You got to watch Jamesy Boy. And I'm just giving them the yeah. And they wore me down. 6-8 months. They're like, you watch it yet? So finally, I broke down and watched this movie. And I was inspired. I was like, that's a good movie, man. They're like, that's me. And there's these young black dudes telling me Jamesy Boy, which is a story about a white boy getting locked up at 15 and serving his entire adult life in solitary.
Oh, man.
So because he's so young, gets charged as an adult, goes into solitary until he's like 22 or 23. And it's a true story. So I'm so inspired by this movie, and I'm just really like this movie really closed the gap on race for me. I was like, wow, here's these young black dudes who are associating with this young white guy and his story, talk about that's me, I'm feeling it. So I reached out to the guy. The guy's name is James Burns. That's the movie was about this guy named James Burns, and he was the producer and director. He had done some other projects in Hollywood, and somebody said, man, you've got an amazing story. Let's do it. So they did Jamesy Boy. It's not a B movie, dude. It's got Ving Rhames. It's got one of the Farmiga girls. It's got some serious actors in there. Not John Boyd. I can't remember who else, but I was impressed. So randomly, I reached out for little Timmy TJ and the guys. I said, you know what? I'm going to reach out. Emailed this guy, James Byrne, on his page, totally random, shot in the dark. And I was like, hey, bro. And I shared the story. I said, look, I got these kids we build relationships with. They're locked up right now. They wore me out, wore my ass out. I had to watch your movie. I said, I'm inspired. I love it. I got a copy for them. I said, but would you be willing to share your story with them in person? And he just hit me back within 24 hours. Absolutely. I'm in New York shooting a film. I'll be in Baltimore for something, Memorial Day. I got family. I'll be driving through.
Nice.
And now I'm like, oh crap. He said, yes. What do I do? Right. So there's this movie producer who told his own story, and he's like, yes, I'll do it. So I got to call director Gaskins, and I'm like, what do we do to get this guy cleared? Because he's an ex-felon. He's not going to pass fingerprinting, this and that. But I told him the whole story, and not
dude, me too, and I get to win, so it's all right.
Yeah. So the director made it happen so that he could come through and talk to the boys. And when he showed up, only 4 of them. Everybody was on lockdown because there was a big fight. Only 4 of them had permission to come. But I made a case. I said, look, these guys. I got a director from Hollywood here to see these guys. So they pulled 4 guys out. They got to come and meet him. And I expected them to ask. I expected them to ask him questions and hear his story, and he just sat for them with 4 hours. Sat with them while his people waited outside, and he just listened to their stories. And I was like, man, this is stuff, man, right? But but something like that, again, it can't be transactional, right? The transactional people are going to be in and out. They're not going to think of these things, man. But we can create really great opportunities for our kids if the right people are in place, and if they get out the way, let us do what we do.
Yeah, you can't give a kid a King James Bible, have him say the sinner's prayer, and then check him off your list, right? That's not working.
Right.
Good stuff. Yeah, so guys, I'm sorry I had some technical difficulty a little earlier, but I'm back. I just wanted to say hello to John. I mean, I know everybody else on here. Pleasure to meet you. I just wanted to share with you. I was going to kind of piggyback on what you were just saying, Chap. First, before I even introduce myself, my son actually was at a young life camp, and it changed his life. Completely changed his life. I think you mentioned Josh.
Yeah.
Josh.
So my son met him, and he was very impactful. That's why I remember his name. And as an ordained minister and just being in church all the time, my son was always in church, but I never could get him excited or hungry for it. And the Young Life Camp literally made him hungry. I can never make him put his cell phone down, but you guys tell him to put your cell phones away, you know, and he was actually excited about that. He's like, yeah, Dad, I can't talk to you over the weekend. We can't look, you know, we can't touch our cell phones. But you know, I just wanted to tell you how much it changed his life. And he is now in boot camp in the Air Force. And I was just happy to get a letter from him saying, hey, I'm going to church every Sunday, you know, and I do believe that the Young Life camp had a lot to do with changing his perspective as to, you know, his spirituality, because people cared. They listened.
Yeah,
they listened to him, and they heard what he had to say.
I think it's so important as a parent, because I have a son as well and a daughter, and like yeah, I do want to be the spiritual head of our household and raise my kids correctly, but it's so much more important to have other guys speak into their lives, other men and women. Like I am so blessed that my son and daughter both have really cool people that speak. Like my daughter goes to a church in the city called Sowebo Community Church, and there's this really nice lady there named Ashley Thompson who sings in the choir, and she's just come alongside my daughter, and it's such a blessing. Like my wife and I can say stuff to my daughter that sometimes she's like, "Oh, Dad," you know, that kind of stuff. But to have somebody else speak into their life, it's so important. And my son as well, he's in graduate school, and he has this pastor that I'm actually going to meet next week, which I'm pretty excited about, who's come alongside him. And like, this is what we need for kids. We need kids, for young men and young women in the city. We need to have non-parental influences that love them unconditionally and want to speak into their lives.
Amen. So I wanted to thank you for that. And I know I was introducing myself, and I'll really be brief because the show is awesome already. PowerFest, Baltimore. I'm the founder. Chap is my partner. Of course, Quida and Dayson of like family, and they help us along the way. We do a lot of things in the community, but one of the things that kind of talks about what we're doing right now is we have an organization called Empowering Queens, where we have a mentorship program. It's going very well. We've partnered with Reach High School, and it's doing well, but we're also helping some of the young men to treat the women like queens.
Nice.
And it's funny because as I listen to some of the mentors talk, I wish I had some people to talk to me when I was younger. Same as you, John. My dad was in my life. I mean, my dad talked to me. My dad was a very good role model, but I didn't have that outside influence.
Yeah, me
so
too.
A lot of the things my dad was telling me, I didn't get that amen from somebody else.
Right.
I didn't get that confirmation from somebody else. So it took me to learn some of the things the hard way, because I didn't realize. So you know, sometimes in my 30s, I was like, oh man, Dad was right. You know, so it really is important, even if you're not from a broken home, you could be from the best household in the world, to have organizations and peers like you, Dayson, or leaders like you, John, and Quida and Chap, to really talk and impart into these young people's lives. Don't forget the guys and girls that have fathers and mothers and are from great homes. We can't leave them out, because I was one of them. And
Amen.
A lot of stuff I went astray really bad, only because nobody said amen to what my father was already telling me.
Yeah, broken homes are not defined by poverty or the city, or there are a lot of broken homes in Ruxton. Just say that, you know what I mean?
I mean, but not only that, I think that one thing people need to realize is that sometimes, like, kids just want to be heard. Like, even adults just want to be heard. Like, in so many instances, therapy is someone listening to you and asking you questions. Like, they're not telling you, you know, what the answers are. People just want to be heard and know that, you know, someone is listening. And sometimes, you know, to commiserate whatever we're going through, it's helpful to know that someone else is going through the same journey. So listening to those kids and being able to say, you know what, I went through that same thing, or I know a guy, or this is so familiar to me, or yeah, this is foreign. Like, tell me more. Like, let me ask you questions so that you can talk about your story and learn to articulate who you are. You know, like, that's not happening enough in so many of those transactional relationships.
Yeah,
So
I think.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's cool. I just wanted to say, I think you touched on a good point as far as like the therapy thing. I have a lot of people that I mentor that say they just hate therapy, that their parents put them in therapy, or they have to go to therapy in school, and they just hate it. And I always say, yeah, I hate therapy too. It doesn't work. Now, you know, tell me about your problems. What's wrong? You know what I mean? It's not necessarily therapy. Come talk to your friend. Come talk to somebody that you feel comfortable talking to.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Not licensed, not trained, but you can listen. Like sometimes starting
even if
there,
you can even give your opinion, even if it's not a clinical opinion.
Or necessarily a good one.
Well, Dayson,
I'll tell you because when I was. Oh, go ahead, John.
Well, Dayson, I've been thinking about this thing for a long time about how we live our lives, and it's a biblically based thing about pursuing a Paul. Like, how Paul is huge in the scriptures, and he's someone who mentors tons of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And walks alongside people. So pursuing a Paul is something we all have to do. We have to be looking for older and wiser people to speak into our lives, and then we also have to be looking to train a Timothy. We have to be looking for people that we want to disciple. And then also we want to be a Barnabas, which is like we want to have people alongside us, so we want to have really good friends that we're tight with and we hang out with. So I was going to ask you, like, can you identify people that someone that you're pursuing for accountability and correction, and someone that's older than you? And can you identify people that you're also actually helping and working with? I'm sure you can.
Yeah. I mean, I've been volunteering, since I was 14 years old. I've been working with kids in after school programs, daycares, summer camps, so on and so forth, since I was 13 years old. By the grace of God, I was able to meet Chap. I was able to meet Quida. I was able to meet Lou. I was able to meet David McNair and a lot of other people through my journey of volunteering with, a bunch of nonprofit organizations, and all of them have given me good advice. All of them have been a shoulder for me to, cry on, or somebody for me to talk to, somebody for me to get my, feelings or my thoughts or whatever out. And I also have a lot of, I think about 16 or 17 different people that I'm currently mentoring, who I am that person that they turn to cry on their shoulder, right? I'm the person that they turn to talk to. I'm only 20 years old, so I'm not the most experienced person out there, but I have so many different experienced people in my corner that if there is ever a problem that I cannot talk about, that if there's ever anything that I do not directly have access or the ability to talk to them about, then I have so many different people in my corner that I can ask somebody about. And so, yeah, I think that is very important to have both sides.
Bro, you're the future of this city.
Thank you.
Oh, we already know that.
Oh, you guys already knew that. Sorry, I was stating
but absolutely.
Dayson for mayor. I vote Dayson for mayor right now.
He can't do nothing as mayor. He can't do nothing as mayor. We need him to do his
hands
thing.
to be tied.
I'd say more like Dayson for pastor of my church, not for mayor. Politicians, I'm not sure they're doing anything.
That's right.
That's terrible that we all feel and know that is so true. It's like if you want to get something done, you don't become a part of the system. You make your own system and you do what needs to be done, and then you let them know. If you ever let them
We need to be disruptors. We need to be disruptors.
Yeah.
And disruptors everything, not just the political system or not just the faith system. We need to be disruptors because things have to change in order for things to get better.
Dismantle it all. Yes.
Well, I'm the political person, and I have a different opinion on, the power of politics and government.
Let's hear it, man.
We need to be disruptors, but I always look at it as we need to get inside of the system in order to adequately disrupt it, right? If we're on the outside, then I always just think of like an old man, screaming at somebody inside of the house. Right, all they have to do is close their curtains, shut their blinds, and then they can go right back to watching TV or doing whatever they were doing. And so I think you have to be inside of the house in order to adequately disrupt.
Well, see, Dayson, you're speaking from the perspective of someone who actually wants to implement change. Amen. We know that so many people that are in office right now just want to keep on doing what has been done.
Yeah.
And in that instance, the power lies with the people and getting them the hell up out of there.
Yeah.
Amen.
What were you going to add, John?
Well, I was going to say, like, what do you think from a political standpoint, Dayson, that what could politicians be doing to improve our city?
Oh, I can speak to not only our city, but our state and the entire country. One of the biggest problems I think that we have here in America in Maryland and in Baltimore is partisanship and party politics. The fact that we're we're so entrenched in our own beliefs that we do not have the time, nor do we have the desire to examine anything else, right? And so we here in Baltimore have had Democrats for in office for decades, right? There's never been a Republican. There hasn't been. I'm not going to say there hasn't been a Republican mayor in decades, right? And I don't necessarily agree with the Republican platform. However, I know the importance of putting someone in office that does not necessarily think the same way you do, especially if the way you have been thinking has not been working, since 2013, or I think it was between 2013 and 2011 that the crime rate increased. So I those party politics and partisanship is my biggest pet peeve. I really dislike that type of stuff.
Amen. I mean, that's so wise, dude. Because the secular world is telling you that in Baltimore City you must vote Democrat. I'm a registered Democrat, but you must vote Democrat and you must abide by the party line, or else you're some sort of a traitor or something. And I'm not saying that we ought to elect like some T. Rowe Price guy, the mayor, or anything, but like just having putting our votes up for auction, so to speak, by having a competitive political process, I think is so powerful.
And see, one of the issues I see is that in the Democratic Party, I'll just use healthcare as an example. The Democratic Party, the current Democratic Party, there are factions of the current Democratic Party that sees universal healthcare as a big thing, and then there are the old factions of the Democratic Party who do not necessarily like universal healthcare, right? And here in Baltimore, here in Maryland, we don't really acknowledge both different factions of the Democratic Party, right? If we're Democrat, we just vote Democrat, right? Regardless of if we believe in universal healthcare or not. If there is a Democrat running for office that is not willing to implement universal healthcare, then why not vote for the independent or the Green Party candidate that is willing to implement universal healthcare? And it's because we are so entrenched in that Democratic belief that we have to put our, little check mark or bubble in the little section right next to the word Democrat.
Good point, Dayson. Very good point. You were so sharp in understanding the process and the policies. But, a lot of people don't know they call Chicago the Windy City. They think it's because it's windy and cold. And really, Chicago is called the Windy City because of the windbag politicians. That's where the name came from. And that's exactly where the name came from. And
that's so awesome.
But that was one of the beginnings of people starting to run for office based on you liking them and liking their sound bites instead of based on policies. We need to get back to voting for policies. We need to get back to understanding it's not the guy. I'll go out on a limb, and I know this is a show that's probably going to hang me and tar and feather me, but we've got to stop looking at people like Donald Trump and hating Donald Trump and looking at his policies. Or looking at an Obama who has no scandals. He was probably one of the most straightforward presidents we ever had. No scandals, perfect man, squeaky clean, but you got to look at the policies. So when we vote, we need to stop looking at how nice the guy is or how mean the guy is, how straight the guy is or how crooked the guy is, and look at what are the policies of these guys and how can it help me and my community and my household. That is difficult to do. But when you start thinking that way, you almost throw out the whole word Democrat or the whole word Republican goes out of the window, and you start looking at track records and policies. So that's what we need to get back to, and need to stop saying, hey, if you're Democrat, you're just going to push on the whole side of the Democrat, or Republican. It needs to be a new party called the People's Party. And we need to have a party where we are the people, the people of the United States, vote for what's going to be best for us. That's going to be the key. Dayson, let's get it going. Let's get it cracking, baby. You got that.
So the first
candidate from the People's Party.
Yeah, well, I will be the first candidate. I was just going to say that I do partially agree with what you're saying. And I would never be the one to defend any politician, because I do understand there's a real problem with most of the politicians that we have in office now. However, I will say that using Donald Trump may not have been the best, whatever. Because a few minutes ago in this, broadcast, we were talking about the value of morality, right? And no matter how good your policies is, if your morality, or if you have no morals, as Donald Trump, seemingly has no morals, there is no way any of your policies could, get me to vote for you.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's true, but he did get 78 million votes this year. But here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. The point I'll try to make to everybody is that narrative that you put in there will still negate or eradicate the process of getting policies into place. So I'm just saying, you're right. You might want to use Donald Trump as the person I talk about, but I used him because he was the way other side of the pendulum. I used Obama for one side because he was such a squeaky clean president, and I used Donald Trump for the other side of the pendulum to make my point very clear that you got to look at the policies and not be caught up with anybody's. Because let me just say this to you all, everybody, especially a young man on here, don't sometimes take somebody's niceness to be the honest truth, because some people are very good at covering up their mess. And we know that in politics too. So we have to just not, there was a woman who got caught, and I can't remember, I forgot one of the counties surrounding DC, but it was in Maryland, who was a Democratic person, and they caught her on somebody video or audio taped her talking about the N-word people in her area that she had to take care of. And she got caught on tape, but everybody thought she was the sweetest person. She was having dinner at people's homes, kissing babies and hugging people, and they had no idea that's how she felt. So look at the policies is what I'm trying to say.
Gotcha.
Hey, look, I want to comment on that, man, because they are good at cleanup, bro. Like our man Theo got caught with undercover law enforcement acting as prostitutes, caught on camera, and my man still ran for mayor. We got a state's attorney who, good luck finding it, but she was on Judge Judy back when she was in school. But she's so good at cleaning it up, you cannot find. It took me, I swear to you, it took me like 18 months to find one 20-minute clip of her on Judge Judy, because she erased all of it, bro. Like, they are good at cleanup. That's what they do. And if you're part of the clique and part of the, if you're part of the clique, you got a lot of help cleaning that up. If you're willing to play ball and do what they need you to do, they'll help you out.
Dayson, one more point I'll just make, and I'll drop the mic, is Dayson, you did make a good point. From the inside out, Dayson, you're right. You got to get into the house to change the things that we're talking about. And I know I'm beating it. I'm saying this over and over. I'm being redundant, but Dayson, I really would love to see you somewhere in government and be the pastor of John's church.
That would be great. That would be great. The funny thing is, though, Dayson, so my boyfriend, he's an independent. And when he says that, people are like, "A what? Who?" Like,
I'm registered as an independent too.
Yeah. So it's interesting because so many people are like, wait, but I was asking what you were voting. And he's like, yeah, that's what we're talking about. Same conversation. So I think there's an education gap, like most things. And maybe that should be more of a, more of a common conversation. It's not like people are having dinner at the kitchen table every night, but maybe it's something we can talk about in the community on a more regular basis, just like we talk about God, and people aren't talking about God and Jesus on the street. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you make it a part of our culture, it'll be something that will,
Well, on college campuses, politics is a big thing. College campuses usually, or they tend to have events centered just around politics. However, I do think that politics is really like an important thing that we should be having, conversations that we should be having between parents and children. I often hear people say not to talk about politics at the dinner table, not to have the political conversation with people. However, how do you expect people to learn? You don't learn this stuff inside of school. A lot of people thought universal health care meant they're physically going to have to take money out of their pockets and give it to someone else in order to pay for their health insurance. But that is not what universal health care is. But you wouldn't know that unless you actually looked it up or had the conversation with somebody who has a little bit of information on universal health care.
No, that totally makes sense. But again, people don't care. If people aren't talking about it, then it might be that they don't care. And so we need to figure out a way to start talking about it. You know what I mean? Like, just figure it out and, you know, make it a common vernacular. Like, it needs to be something that people are discussing, because the people that are in office now need to be gone.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I agree.
Wholeheartedly.
And based on to Quida's point, people don't have the capacity to care. And if we revisit what John said, if their immediate needs aren't being met,
I know.
I was this morning, I was in North Carrollton and Chester, and I had to go grab some food, some groceries for somebody down there. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking around like most people down there don't have a car. I'm looking around like, where do you get groceries? I had to go all the way to Utah to the Save-A-Lot right there, you know, but it was a bot. And something simple like that, if you're getting your groceries from the corner store and you get your honey buns and your sweet teas and your sodas, your Chinese, like even the market, Avenue's Market is at least closer than the grocery store. But if you order in Chinese for lunch, you're getting, the little greasy breakfast food there for your breakfast, and you're living off of that. You don't really have a capacity to give a crap about politics, because you got to walk past a bunch of drug addicts. You're stepping on needles and broken glass just to get to some resemblance of nutrition, right? Yeah, or even cigarettes. Not that it's healthy for everybody, right? But one of the this old cat asked me to grab a pack of cigarettes while I was down there this morning, and I'm looking around like, well, dang, I can't even go more or less than 6 blocks to get him a pack of cigarettes. Like, it's so their immediate needs for Baltimore City, people in Baltimore City, aren't being met. Their communities are not thriving. So the only thing they have for politicians is complaints. The only thing they have is like arms in the air, like, what's going on?
Yeah,
they can't really bring it to the table because they can't get normal things that shouldn't, that should be expected. They can't get those needs met. So they don't have a capacity to really.
I was just gonna say, like, the lack of resources does contribute to someone's capacity to care. But I think that's more of a reason for us to articulate the significance of politics, right? The significance of government, because what you were just talking about was a food desert. The people that have the power to control, or not necessarily control, but fix the food desert problem is politicians.
No, control, because at some point somebody is making a budget and they're deciding to instead build a 25-story building rather than putting a grocery store in West Baltimore.
Right.
But finish your point.
No, I was just gonna say, so I guess it would also be control. But I know that Baltimore City or Maryland had a contract with Comcast, which kind of got rid of a lot of competitors, right? But if they can have a contract with Comcast, why can't they have a contract with Save-A-Lot or Shoppers or Giants or something to put food in the areas where it's needed?
Well, so there's two sides to that, right? There's one side that you're 100% right about. But there's also this sense of we have to change people's behaviors and patterns as well. We have to really influence them because, the apples and oranges place up on North Avenue that guy built, like, that was a disaster.
Their food was also expensive.
Yeah, but he didn't sell cigarettes, and he didn't sell liquor, and he didn't sell a lot of stuff, and like he lost a fortune on that. Like, and I've been involved with a group of business guys that tried to solve that food desert thing. It's really tough to build a food store in a neighborhood where people don't shop. They're not accustomed to shopping for food.
So I got to jump in. John. This is great. I'm glad we have this. I'm so awesome. It's so awesome to have an eclectic group on here, so we can really bring some things up. And I'm always seem like I'm kind of the one shaking things up on the show. I seem like I'm becoming that person. But let me tell you, John, one of the things is that there's a system set into place that's already set into place that when the people that you're talking about bring those food markets and they're trying to help and they really want to do the right thing, it's not the people who want to shop there or the lack of people wanting to shop there or the lack of education of who should shop there. It's the system that's already set into place that makes it almost impossible for them people to shop there. So there's already a system already set into place to already make that place fail.
So how do we change that?
Right.
Because what are you talking about as system? Like
no. So listen, it's like this. If people did not want fresh fruits and vegetables, we would not be at the school every Saturday.
Okay.
So there's some perception from people outside of where we live that they don't want fresh fruits and vegetables, but that's not the case.
Okay, I understand.
Specifically, the things that are seen foreign, like don't bring kimchi to the hood. Like we don't know what kimchi is. I know what kimchi is, but instead it should be cabbage. Like that is something that's familiar to people who are in this area.
Mm-hmm.
But there are urban gardens who are doing cooking shows, or not shows, but cooking demonstrations from the food that they're growing in their gardens because there are no grocery stores around. So yes, a little piece of it is education and how to better prepare vegetables, but there is no shortage of people catching hats and Ubers to the Aldi's that is now right there in Highland. And that's one of the only Aldi's in East Baltimore. You know what I mean? And I was going to the apples and oranges. Their stuff was hella expensive. It's fine. I was going there.
Yeah,
I also shop at Whole Foods. Like I understand the importance of vegetables and organic foods, but sometimes turnips don't need to be in our plate. It should be potatoes. You know what I mean? It's just those little things. Start with, our staples, because it's not that people don't want great food. Sometimes it's the store closes from 9 to 5. I'm at work from 9 to 5. Like you need different hours. Like just
but that's all a part of a system. It's all those small things add up.
I'm just putting it out there so that people understand if I gotta catch the bus to get to work and catch the bus to get home, if the store is closed by 8 o'clock, guess who's not getting fresh fruits and vegetables today?
Right.
So John asked me, how can we change this? So my point is, and I never bring up anything without a solution. My point is, I'm going to go back what Dayson said, and I'm kind of going to go against my two top people on the top right of my screen on a panel. That's Chap and my sister Quida. That we don't have to really get everybody out of office. What we have to do is put demands on the people who are there before we vote for them in the first place. So in other words, and that talks about the fact that we talk about Democrat and Republican, or even liking a guy. We vote for a guy because we like him. And a lot of the people in the poor and Black community, I have to admit, will vote for somebody because they like the guy, or this really nice guy, or it's the policy. So, hey, Mr. So-and-so running for mayor, you will get my vote if you make sure that we're not a food desert in district, whatever, in district 7 or district. And then they'll say, well, okay, we put a restaurant, grocery market there. What are you going to put in place to make sure it doesn't fail? So John's friends who do the market and they say, hey, we're not getting enough money in here right now. There's plenty of money in the government to say, okay, Mr. John's friends who did the market, there's some money set aside to keep you guys afloat until what Quida's saying, that we educate the people enough to be able to get you going. But there are things that we could put into place, but we have to put demands on the people that we're voting for. They don't have to go. We need to put demands on them and say, if you're not going to do this, we're not going to vote for you. And sometimes their hands are tied because the very people who need the things aren't asking for the things. They're just saying, I like that guy. He did a good speech and I really voted for him because he's a nice guy. We need to say, hey, I know you're a nice guy. I really like you, but this is what we need from you in order to be for you to be in office. If you're not going to do it, we'll put somebody else in there who will.
Yeah, you're a nice guy and we need this.
Yeah, and I think there needs to be consensus on that too.
There's also this thing though that we have to understand as we try to partner. I live in the city, but inside the city and outside the city, most people don't want to be dependent on government. Well, I should say most people that I know who give money to our charity, support our charity, don't want to take any federal money. They don't want to take any money from the government at all because they think it restricts their behavior. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it's just true. so it's something we have to address, whether it's right or wrong. So they would say
it's true. It's also true in the homeless, people who are experiencing homelessness. They're like, I'm not signing a paper. I'm not getting an ID. Like, I don't want to be a part of the system. Go ahead, John.
Well, I'm just saying we have to have businesses that actually work. and how do we get those businesses to work? You know, I was part of a group that tried to set up like a rotisserie chicken, like a Peruvian chicken place on the west side, and we just couldn't get it going. It was so hard to get any community support for that, and the community support was like, well, you could do it, but you have to turn it over to local ownership. Like, well, I get where that sounds awesome, and I get it, but like if I have to actually put my money and my buddy's money's up to do this, like if it makes a profit, we need to get something out of it and get our money back before we turn it over to local ownership. So I just see so much.
I'm sorry, let me ask you this. What made you all want to put a Peruvian chicken spot wherever it was that you decided to put it there?
So I met this great guy in York, Pennsylvania that ran a Peruvian chicken place. He was Peruvian, obviously. And he did it in conjunction with his prison ministry program and his faith. And, you know, he served people that couldn't afford to eat, and he hired people that were incarcerated, and the chicken was awesome as well. So it seemed like a really good business model to put on the west side. And I had a group of like 10 guys that said, like, look, we're going to fund this, and we're going to put it in there. And I got connected with, well, I won't go into which organization, but I got connected with an organization, a neighborhood organization on the west side, and we just couldn't make it work. It was terrifying to me. Like basically the attitude was, and look, I'll be honest with you, like I live in the city, but I do have a lot of suburban white friends who want to help, and they're not always about walking alongside. Sometimes it's just about like telling people what they should do, and it's not great. I get that, but they actually had good hearts and wanted to do it, but we couldn't do it because I just say there's so much sin on both sides of these things. Like the city did not receive us. People in that neighborhood didn't receive us well.
That's what I was wondering. Did the neighborhood want it?
Yeah, and my buddies, they were kind of jerks about it as well. They're like, well, if they don't want us here, then we won't be here. I'm like, well,
okay, bye. No, like y'all need to. Sorry, John.
Yeah.
But that was kind of what I was getting to. Like, if the community did not come to your ministry or your homeboy and say, you know what, we need a Peruvian chicken spot, then you might not want to consider putting a Peruvian chicken spot, because maybe what it should have been was grandma's soul food, and they would have been okay with that.
You're right.
You know what I mean? And that would have just been a couple different seasonings, same menu, same type of food. Like, but it's a conversation with the community.
But that's it. It's a conversation that doesn't happen, right? Because all my white buddies from the suburbs didn't want to have that conversation, and then all my buddies from the city didn't want to have that conversation either. So it was like I just feel
that's the hard part. No, I get it.
On both sides, it's like it's such a disaster. Like here were a group of guys who wanted to fund a healthy food source in the city, but because they were knuckleheads and the community were knuckleheads as well, it didn't work. So this is the whole thing about listening to each other, cooperating, just loving people unconditionally, walking alongside them. I think it actually is fairly easy if we just humble ourselves.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know you guys wanted to say something, but one thing that I can say is that a way that I would have framed that particular initiative was, one, working with the local high schools and doing some sort of internship work, work.
Yeah, amen.
I can't remember what they're called. I want to call it work release, but that's definitely a prison thing. But you get what I'm saying? Like some sort of internship and training with culinary, and you know what I mean? To your point, you definitely wanted to work with people who are formerly incarcerated, but also it has to be something that the community wants, because to me that sounds like, okay, y'all bringing a whole bunch of criminals and some food that we don't want into our community.
But like in the suburbs, and just think about this. Like I assess, because I'm a small business guy, because I'm a felon, right? So I can't have a real job, right? So that's why I'm involved in prison ministry, and it's a long time ago, but still that hangs over my head, right? So I have to be a small business person. So that might be, I've owned some dry cleaners, I've owned some restaurants, I've owned some Wendy's restaurants, different things over the years, and to try to feed my family. So in those situations, when I'm dealing in the suburbs, I don't go and ask the community for involvement. I assess people's community. And like,
the suburbs are different. Their needs are different. Nobody's thinking about Peruvian chicken.
Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking about it, but my needs are being met on a daily basis. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's really like that fundamental. Are you going to be able to give my son a job? Like, then maybe I don't want you in my community because that's all I need at this moment. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
You know what, guys? What's making me smile and making my heart just warm right now? We're having the conversation right now.
Nice.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's happening like right now before our eyes. We talk about, you know, John, I hear in your heart exactly what you were trying to do, and I hear what your friends were trying to do, and I think it was all good. And Quida, I hear what you're saying. I hear the needs and everything. And then, you know, Dayson, it's like you're giving that young, fresh attitude, and you're also bringing that whole political attitude to it. And Chap, he just got the heart of a I don't know what kind of heart he's got. I don't have it, but this guy's got a heart that nobody else in this world has. And I'm like, I feel like I'm just sitting on the sideline, just watching this whole thing come together, where I feel like that people like the four of you coming together and understanding and having a civil conversation with each other is what's going to fix the food deserts and everything else. You know, with guys like John who are businessmen, but you get it. You know, you said you were a felon. You get it. I saw in a movie one time, and I can't remember the movie, but the guy was talking about how bad his life was, and was a white guy. And the black guy said, "Congratulations, you're a black man." So it's like, but I mean, it's like, so you understand some of the trials and tribulations people go through. And Quida, I know your passion for the homeless, and you have brought light to me, because I don't make it a secret. I grew up with a silver spoon in my mouth. I didn't grow up in the hood. I grew up in Pikesville in the 60s and 70s. Most of my friends were Jewish and white. So I get both perspectives. On the weekends, I was down in Murphy Homes with my cousins. So I get both sides. So point being is that we're having that conversation today. And I just didn't want this call to end, or this show to end, without me saying, God bless you guys. We are having that conversation right now. Yeah. This is awesome.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lou, for recognizing that conversation. But I think after this conversation, the thing we need to do is make sure we implement action. If we're talking about problems, there needs to be something that follows. As much as talking about it is important, action is just as important.
Right. But another point like that I'm not trying to skate over are some of the things that, if anybody else is listening and thinking about a venture in a neighborhood that you don't live in, these are the things to consider. Who's the neighborhood association? What's the neighborhood school? Who does everybody know? And like start to get to build relationships, because that could have worked if people thought that their children could get a job there, or, you know, there was going to be some sort of culinary workforce development. Like, it still comes down to what's in it for me, even though it looks like, you know, we don't have anything. No, this is our community, and this is the leverage that we bring. You know what I mean?
Let me say one thing that'll be a little controversial. I just want to say this. Like,
owned
I've
some
some restaurants in the city, and I've recently closed them. Especially the last one in Fells Point just didn't work out at all because of COVID and lots of stuff going on. So here's what I think: that a whole bunch of white people from the suburbs won't go to Fells Point anymore because they're scared they're going to get shot. Now, that's not true. There's absolutely zero cross-racial violence in the city, and it's totally safe for people to be in Fells Point. But despite that, if people actually feel that, I feel like the government and us as city people have a responsibility to respond to that false narrative, and unconditionally to draw them back into the city. Because without them in the city, I can't run a restaurant if no white people from Moncton will come in and eat it there. So it's like we have to look at both sides of this thing. And I tend a little more on the liberal side than on the conservative side, but I have a lot of friends on both sides. And like I think we ought to the only person we can ever fix in a situation is ourselves. So we ought to be looking for the sin on both sides of this aisle. Like the city government needs to kowtow to people in the suburbs who may have, I might identify them as racist instincts, but maybe it's just fear. I don't know what. But we need to kowtow to people like that to get them to come back into town, because that's what creates the jobs for sons and daughters and people coming out of jail and people coming out of drug and alcohol rehab and that's what we have a better metroplex if we have diversity in the city and the suburbs. And so we have to address issues that might not even be true. I think they're actually not true for my sake. But if any of my conservative friends are listening to me, I'll say might not be true. But
right, some things are just a perception or a stereotype, or like we're having now, just a conversation to air some things out to make some things clear. Because in some cases, it's like we're saying the same thing, but because we're using different words, you don't recognize it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So but more importantly, it's all about open conversation and dialogue. Yeah.
And guess what? That's Baltimore. That's why I love Baltimore so much. That's why I'm passionate about Baltimore. That's why I live in Baltimore City. I live in between Canton and Highlandtown. And I love this city because it's so eclectic. It has all those people. The rich white person from Moncton, John, there's one living next door to me right now in my neighborhood. And so I'm saying that's Baltimore. We have to learn how to live together. We have to learn how to work together. And we need to learn how to rise together. My father used to say that when the tide rises, all the boats go up. So we need to learn how to get Baltimore up and running together.
I agree. I love that, Lou.
Man, well, you said it.
Right.
John, sounds like we need to have you back on for some more conversations, brother.
That'd be fun. I really enjoyed this. You guys are awesome, and it's been a fun conversation.
Yeah, John, it was great talking to you. I like talking to people that understand some of the things that people in my community have to go through, because a lot of people don't realize like the hoops that you have to jump through once you have a record. You know what I mean? So those conversations need to be had on both sides too. So yes, thank you for your input. This was awesome.
Yeah, I'll just say that I know that God loves me and forgives me, but He hasn't removed the consequence of my poor decisions and my sin, and they are an enduring consequence that I live with every single day.
Wow.
And I know that lots of people in the city are living in the midst of those consequences. And it's on one hand, it's totally unfair, but on the other hand, it's like there's this 1 Corinthians 15 verse. It says like, no matter what, stop sinning. And I'm really glad to have buddies around me that say like, listen, man, like, all right, you could complain to me all you want that people don't like you because you're a felon, but you need to clean up your act and like stay straight, right? And do the right thing. And I really appreciate that. And that is the message I want to bring to young kids, whether it's my son or a bunch of white kids in my, in a small group, or a bunch of black kids from the city. I want to bring that same message no matter who it is. I want to have integrity of my message to say that like we can only change ourselves. So we need to stop sinning if we want to achieve.
Love that.
That's drop the mic, bro. That's it. Appreciate
Good
that.
stuff.
That's a drop the mic moment, man.
Chap, can you send us an email out to everybody in this group so we can all stay connected?
Yes, absolutely, bro. I just want to say welcome to the family. I can't wait to have you back. We definitely got to grab some coffee in person, but I appreciate you guys' time tonight.
Coffee is all I drink.
I'm pretty sure everyone on here will not disagree with you.
It's an addictive substance, dude. Stay away from it.
All I drink, 6 cups a day.
Just water, right? Just water.
Did you say 6 cups a day of coffee?
Oh, bro.
Yeah, I'm constantly being beat on the head about that, but yeah.
Oh man,
Lord have mercy.
Okay, we need to talk to you about your addiction.
We finally found Superman's kryptonite.
If we just properly formed kryptonite. Yeah, if we properly formed a relationship with you, then we can hold you accountable to that.
My goodness, this was great, Chap. This was awesome, guys.
Yeah, man. Thank you, John, so much. Look,
all right.
We'll get you guys.
It was great to be with you guys.
We'll be back next Monday at 7.
All right.
Appreciate you guys. Love you guys.
I'm going to log off.
I'll be back. Bye, guys.
God bless.